Welcome to another chapter of In the Keep. I'm your very own prophet of the drowned god, the Motherlode, and this show is all about the world of first-person shooters, their legacies, their lineage, and the people who keep that world turning. It is the will of the drowned god Katala that we band together to frag and jib one another into oblivion for all eternity. Alright, thank you to Dots, Moose, Paul, Zach, Alexander, Lashaka, Brad, Night Owl, Tones, Jeffrey, Larissa, Nabe, and Steve, all of whom have donated via Patreon, via PayPal, credit card donations, bought stuff through our Amazon affiliate link, bought something from our Redbubble store, like an In the Keep t-shirt or stickers or something along those lines, or become Nitro boosters on our Discord page. We appreciate all of you, and I'm going to try to keep the plugs and everything relatively short this time. So let's just thank you to all of them and go ahead and get right into it. So this week on the podcast, we have a very awesome guest. This is one of the cooler interviews that I personally really enjoyed doing, and we've done a lot of really cool ones lately, so that should say something. We talked to Dragonfly, and he's just such a nice dude, man. It's just really hard to believe how just completely kind and generous someone can be, you know, with what they do. And Dragonfly is one of those guys that just, you know, come from a nice family and became just an amazing Doom mapper. And he made, you know, Skulldash, which we'll talk about a bit. I wasn't as familiar with that as I should have been, but hey, you know, whatever, you learn something every day. And I really, you know, I wanted to talk about Eviternity. Eviternity was an amazing CAC award winning Mega Wad that came out, and it just blew everybody's mind. It blew the whole Doom scene up. We played it for our charity tournament, the Pigeon Classic this past year, and had a fantastic time. Just had a ball. And of all the people that they could have picked to do maps for Prodeus, guess who they picked? They picked Dragonfly. So we spend a good amount of time just kind of talking about, you know, we talked about his passion for Doom, mostly like the making of Eviternity, and what, you know, like he did some progressive duel stuff with Decay and guys like that. And then we get into Prodeus a bit, and we talk for quite a good bit about just, I got a lot more information than I expected to get, you know what I'm saying? Like we talked a bit about like the process that's going on, the creative process of how they're kind of getting the maps done, and how it all works, and what we can expect from the game and everything. And I can't wait for you to hear it, and that's why I'm just going to shut the fuck up and let the music play. So the music that you're hearing right now is by Eris, Falling, from the original soundtrack of Eviternity. And after the interview, we'll play another track from Eviternity by the great and powerful James Paddock. That's all I got for you guys today, so let's get in the keep with Dragonfly.
Hi, so I'm Dragonfly. I'm known in the Doom community for creations such as Skulldash and Eviternity, and I'm currently working on a video game called Prodeus. I've been hired as the level designer for that.
I'm going to have to go down two roads with this one. This is really interesting and fun because you have such an amazing career in Doom that we could probably just. I wish I'd caught you before Prodeus just so we could just talk about Doom.
Well, we could do that if you like.
I'm gonna have to address Prodeus, or we'd have to do 2 episodes or something, or we'll see how the conversation goes, and kind of follow the path that we end up on.
Sounds good to me.
But yeah, it's rare though that I end up with someone who's like got this awesome, background. Like Eviternity alone is just such an amazing project that we could just talk about that. But you're also like, I want to have you promote Proteus as well. So again, we'll figure it out.
Sure.
So, where did you get started? How did you fall into this whole Doom mapping thing?
Oh, God, we're going back some time here. So, when I was a child, my father used to play Doom and Quake back in the early 90s. And I don't know, I was always interested in what he's doing. He was a little cautious because I was quite young. Not sure how I'd deal with that sort of thing. It might be too scary or what have you. But when he and his friends were doing like a few deathmatch sessions here, there, and everywhere, I'd try and join in, even though I was like really bad at the game, too young, I barely remember it, sort of thing. I used to sit and watch him make levels for him and his friends to play deathmatch on. And when I was a little older, the Doom Collector's Edition came out. I believe it was 2005 when it had the Doom 3 demo on it. Maybe 2004, I can't quite remember. But yeah, I picked up a copy of that for cheap, and the rest is history from there. I was curious. I'd looked online to see if there's any more levels once I'd beaten it, and there were thousands upon thousands, and I was more interested in, okay, well, if these people could make theirs, how do I make mine? Picked up a copy of Doom Builder 1 by Codimp. That was in 2005, and yeah, just sort of became a slave to the Doom game, so to speak.
And what were those early projects like for you? Like just...
Oh, Christ. Well, none of them are surviving today, probably for the best. But yeah, they were your typical, new mapper trying to do too much without any understanding of what they're actually trying to do type maps. So my first map didn't have any doors or switches or anything because I didn't know how to make that work. That was good. Once I'd got an understanding of that, I then downloaded a copy of XWE and started like punching in other people's work, like texture packs, different music. I even remember there was a RPG mod, a really early RPG mod for ZDoom that I merged into my own projects before asking the person if it's okay, which was stupid. And started trying to make a whole like RPG game in Doom and gave up on that. Then switched over and started doing different community projects under a long forgotten username. And then I sort of went off the rails for a bit. I sort of ditched the community because everyone was telling me, your maps suck. This is what you should be doing. And rather than take the advice, I got in a bit of a childish, like grumpy attitude to it and stopped, and decided a couple of years later to come back to the ZDoom forums instead of Doom World, thinking it's a friendlier place, and joined a few community projects there. So that would be like the full history before any of my notable projects, pretty much.
And was your pops like playing your stuff? Was he into it?
He's still into it now, yeah. He's not so much of a gamer these days, so he does find the work I do very difficult to play, but he absolutely loves just sort of looking into what I've been doing, keeping in touch with what the community's up to, that sort of thing. And I don't know, he seems really proud of me from it, and I'm really thankful for his support. Ultimately, having a parent who like encourages it rather than sort of shuts it down, saying, "Oh, you play games too much," it does worlds of good at the end of the day.
That's gotta be amazing. Yeah, it's like a family business almost. Like,
yeah, that's one way of looking at it. I mean, we have actually done a bit of family business before. So he used to DJ and I used to do all the lights for him, which has actually influenced a couple of Doom maps.
Like a Nightlife Vine Sauce mapping contest. Yeah.
Yep, that was
I'm
it.
looking at your website if you can't tell.
I guessed it was that of the wiki.
Yeah. No, it looks like that kind of thing definitely harkens back to, like, if you have that eye for design, if you have that kind of 3D spatial intelligence and everything, that it would make sense that you'd do lighting for DJing. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's good fun. It's good fun. We stopped that about a year ago, so I have more free time for other projects like Prodeus, or actually having a social life.
What kind of music were you guys doing?
It was your typical sort of cheesy disco stuff, all your 70s and 80s, whatever people want to have at their wedding or their birthday, that kind of thing. Nothing like particularly hardcore in any way.
Right on.
Although
Okay,
we
cool.
did do a couple of 18th birthday parties. Those usually played more modern stuff and more electronic stuff, so that was usually good fun to do all the lights too.
That's the leading up to, you said.
Yes.
So the entire history leading up to before I made anything of note. So what do you consider like, okay, here's where I start, like the real me came out?
Yeah, so there's a community project on the ZDM forums called 10, the 10 community project, and in that, I wouldn't say that project was particularly great from my perspective. Like the maps I put out were pretty bad, but the bonus map, which I believe was map 21, the secret map, so to speak, was where my project Skulldash started. So I made this whole concept where you had to collect tokens in a time limit and get enough of them to be able to open up the exit and leave. I did that as a secret map, thinking, oh yeah, it's a ZDoom project, we should put in some ZDoom features, do something a little bit more advanced. The map itself was awful looking back at it, but it's what birthed an entire megawad that I later worked on called Skulldash. And 10 was done in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, and Skulldash ended up coming out in 2015. So there was quite a long period of time between the two to develop the whole thing.
Now, I think it's important for me to say early on in this that I am about as much a novice Doom player as you could get. Actually, Eviternity was the first WOD that I ever personally took and dragged into GZ Doom and okay, I'm gonna do this on my own, because every modded version of Doom that I'd played before then had been in multiplayer servers that someone else set up.
I see.
Or had sent me a fully playable package. So I think that's important to say. I'm not aware of Skulldash until right now you're telling me about it.
Okay.
So what made that project special?
The main core concept behind Skulldash is that it forces the player to just keep moving. So there's these little tokens called skull tokens that are sort of floating around the level, 5 different kinds, and you had to collect 75% of all of the tokens in the level before you could reach the exit. So it harkens back to that sort of collectathon type gameplay that you got in the 90s in 3D platforms like Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie or Spyro the Dragon. But with a speedrunner element. So there was a time limit per map. So you had to run around and collect the tokens in this time limit while fighting off all the various different hellspawn. And different tokens had different effects. So you had the basic token, which was just the main collectible. Then you had a blue token, which added 5 seconds to the timer. A green token, which gave some armor. A red token, which gave some health. And then a gold token, which gave, I think it was 100 armor. I'd have to double check that now. But yeah, the whole point of it was just go fast, go hard, or die sort of thing. And I think that's what makes it a little bit different, is it's like a forced speedrunning type WOD.
Neat. And how did what gave you the idea to do something like that?
Well, I was prompted to make a secret map for the 10 community project back in 2008, and I was just puzzling with different ideas, and then I built this idea using a health potion where you had to collect all the health potions to get out, and then thought, well, how about I make it a little bit more special? Made a coin, a really bad sprite back then, but it's what started the whole thing. It was just like a sort of natural development. I was bouncing it back and forth with a Doom user called Remarath. Back then they were known as Morpheus, an Italian Doomer. He's quite a good friend of mine, and yeah, he really helped me sort of work out the sort of programming side of it. So learning the decorate I needed to learn, learning the ACS I needed to learn, and from there I just maintained that passion of trying to push my knowledge a little bit further each time I do a new map, each time I work on a new piece of code, that sort of thing. He really helped out with that, and the whole project of Skulldash taking 7 years was also a big part of that, whereas I was just constantly trying to push myself forward.
That's amazing. What was the next project that you ended up working on Doom-wise? Okay,
so during the development of Skulldash, I did do 2 map contributions for Stronghold. That was the big, not sure how to word it. I guess it's almost like a tower defense type thing. Or like an invasion mode, essentially, where you've got to defend a location from the demons who are just charging towards it. That was fronted by Tormentor 667 back in 2010, I think is when it came out. And I did 2 maps for that, but then both the aforementioned Remarath and some other people sort of jumped in and helped out make the maps look a bit better and play a bit better. So I had Tormentor 667, and I believe Vader also helped out with those maps, which was really good fun.
What I'm kind of gathering from this is that you started off and you're like, I wasn't really getting anywhere. I wasn't getting the praise that maybe you wanted, but it seems like you kind of found your way in making these things that are like utilize new aspects of the game, like different modes or different like not your typical just find your key and keep moving Doom.
Yeah, that was definitely my roots. It was playing other people's work, which had things that went above and beyond what Doom fundamentally was. That sparked an interest in me, and making that sort of content myself was definitely a big push in my skills. But as time went on, I gained more and more of an appreciation of just more classic Doom gameplay.
Right.
So later on, I co-founded a project called Elementalism, which still isn't out now. Which was, its intention was kind of meant to be the best of both worlds. So it's meant to be like these big, very impressive looking like GZ Doom format maps with all the like fancy bells and whistles like 3D floors, dynamic lighting, so on and so forth, but with a very classic approach to gameplay. So the idea is it's not forcing you to play a way you wouldn't normally play. It's not trying to be something that isn't Doom. It's still fundamentally Doom, just looking as good as it can. But I later backed out of that project to work on Eviternity because I just had that itch to do something even more genuinely Doom, more classic. And I was presented the opportunity to use the Otex texture pack by Akira. So yeah, that's where that came from.
I do want to touch on another one that I saw. You did a progressive duel map, right?
I've done a few now. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a game mode that I've heard a lot about, but have never actually done. Can you kind of explain like what's special about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So progressive duel is doing Doom duel, but in a new school format. So things like free look are supposed to be used. There's a couple of additional weapons like railgun, grenade launcher, lightning gun.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, like the maps are quite 3D. So it's taking Doom in a more sort of Quake 3 arena, or like arena FPS sort of direction. Prog duel, the whole like ethos about it is these maps are completely and utterly intended for 1 versus 1. A couple of the maps do work well in free for all, but they're definitely best played 1 versus 1. And I believe this, I couldn't say who the actual leader of the group is, so to speak, but it's by the Mechanics Union. So there's people like Rust King and Decay who are part of the group there.
Mm-hmm.
And I very much fell under sort of Decay's wing when it came to the multiplayer mapping side of things. So me and him have played Deathmatch for quite a long time at this point. And he was just like, oh, come on, dude, make a map. We really want you on board. And I was like, okay, I'll do just one. Which was a sort of a remake of Toxicity, which I believe is in Quake 2. I don't know, I discovered it in Quake Live. I remade it and sort of like distorted the layout to suit Doom a bit better. Mm-hmm. And that became quite a popular map for the like tougher rounds. It's quite advanced because there's 3 main power-ups that you need to collect, the like 2 different armors and the soul sphere, and they respawn every 30 seconds. So in a duel, people naturally gravitate towards these power items every 30 seconds and try and prevent the other player from getting them. So with 3 different items to sort of manage the timings of in your head, it made it quite a competitive and vicious map to play on.
Now, is this still a race to a certain number of frags, or is this a time?
Yeah, it's typically either timed or has a frag limit, or both. I think the frag limit, when myself and Decay usually play, is I believe it's 20 or 25 we normally play to, or 10 minutes, I think, whichever happens first.
Okay.
And yeah, some of the, I mean, we played it last night as it goes. We hopped on Prog Duel and did some testing of some new maps. But yeah, sometimes it gets very, very heated, and I find it's much more balanced and competitively viable than just like standard Doom out of the box.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just an interesting concept to me. I should try it out, and I will eventually. It's just like there's a lot of content coming at me from all directions lately.
Of course.
But, well, yeah, it's just the way the world works, and especially doing what I'm trying to do here. But
Absolutely.
The first thing that comes to mind is like the way that Doom PvP typically works is, there's, we're trying to race towards, I don't know, something like 50 or 75 frags. And it's very, it doesn't reset like Quake does, like you're constantly just getting kill after kill after kill. And then, you can die or kill someone and then they can come back with a shotgun and then come back and kill you immediately. Whereas in Quake, that is not the case. You're controlling items and you could feasibly just have a big fat stack, and not have to worry about someone coming back. Like, as long as they don't have a bigger stack than you, they could have any weapon they want. They're not realistically going to be able to just like completely offset the balance of the game. Doom is very much not like that.
Yeah, Doom's much more chaotic typically.
Right. So with mods like this, like Progressive Duel, or even like Quake Champions Doom Edition, which is essentially meant to model Quake in the Doom engine, I don't know. It just fascinates me. Like, what made you guys want to do that?
I don't know what made the group as a whole want to do this. I was very much a late joiner to it, but from my perspective, what made me want to contribute towards the project was the way that it felt like the best of both worlds. It felt like I was playing something with the refinement of Quake's 1v1 like combat in a game I prefer, Doom. So it really does just seem to be, from my perspective at least, like the perfect middle ground.
Now I can't wait to try it. You've sold me. Congrats.
Fantastic. Well, if you fancy a duel sometime, hit me up.
Well, let's do that. Actually, that'd be really fun. Maybe we could perhaps play one of your maps and have you kind of walk us through it and show us like the little knickknacks of it and everything. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I'd be completely down for that. That'd be great.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll schedule that after the interview at some point.
Sure thing. So,
moving on, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Eviternity, as I said, is like kind of the first mod that I felt the need to I need to play this by myself. Like, I'm not going to just wait on somebody to set it up in our co-op server or whatever. I'm going to go out. I'm going to learn how to fuck with files, and I'm going to drag this thing in here. I'm going to play it. And I played it over Christmas. It's incredible, man. It's just such a fantastic, every level is just amazing.
Thank you.
How did you get the inspiration to do this, and like what were your motivation? Everything. Tell us the whole story.
Okay, well, if we go right back to the beginning, so it's probably about February time, maybe early March. Akira reached out to me saying, like, hi, I've got this texture pack that I'm working on. I've been working on it for many, many years, like since Darkening Episode 2 came out. And I'm looking for people who are willing to test it. And I replied, aware of like how long standing Akira's like existence has been in the Doom community. I think he's been here since 99, 98, something like that, maybe earlier. And I was a little bit, dare I say, starstruck, the fact that he reached out to me of all people. And I found out he'd reached out to a couple of other people, and most people had reluctantly sort of turned it down, saying, look, I'm a little bit too busy at the moment. Good luck. And I replied saying much the same, like, I'm a bit too busy at the moment, but I'd happily make one map for it and see how it goes. And he was just like, cool, see what you get on with. And if you've got any areas of the textures that you feel are lacking, or if there's some textures that aren't quite up to the standard of the rest of them, let me know. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, that's cool. So I sat down one weekend in, I want to say it's February, was it March? I'm not too sure, of 2018, and got to work, and I dug through the 1,200 textures at the time or something crazy. Had a skim through and saw some like different themes popping out at me that caught my interest, and I thought, I really like these stone textures, like these stone bricks, and like these different like runes he had on them and stuff. And I was like, okay, I need to use these. These ones have really caught my eye. So I made what later became Eviternity Map 1, and I made it in the space of about 3 or 4 days. Pinged it back to him, and he was quite dumbfounded at how quickly I'd built it, and was like, so what do you think of the texture pack? And I was like, honestly, I actually want to carry on using it like now, kind of thing. And he's like, wow, really? And like we started building up a bit of a friendship over time. And later, I think it was the same week that I'd finished Map 01 of Eviternity, I thought, let's make an episode. We'll make it just a 5-map thing. So I started making what became Map 2, which was like this cavernous map with a couple of like marble ruins. And I don't know, it just very quickly developed from there, really. I kept maintaining interest in it, and after I'd got to about 5 or 6 maps done. And I started thinking, I think it's after I finished the second map, I was like, I want to try some different themes. Went away and I tried making a tech base, which became map 7. And I think I did 8 straight away after it. And then played around with other themes and very quickly came to the decision that I'm just going to make a Megawad. Let's do it. I want to make a whole 32 maps. And then I was sort of like looking for reasons to make a Megawad and found that Doom's 25th anniversary was about to come up. And I was like, how possible is it to get a Megawad done in like the next 6.5 months, 7 months? And everyone's like, you're crazy. You're absolutely insane. And I was like, yeah, but am I? I think I could do it. And I sort of set out on this mission to make a Megawad and started developing the themes for each episode. So I started just doing 1 map from each episode or 2 maps from each episode just to define what the themes were going to be. And then very quickly decided I want an ice episode and reached out to Akira to say like, hey, I've noticed there's like 2 ice textures and 1 snow texture or something. And that's not enough to make an entire episode out of. And he was like, oh, yeah, that. I was going to delete those. I really don't want to do those textures. And I was like, yeah, but I've started using them. Don't suppose you could finish it now, do you? And he was like, oh, fuck. Okay. Yeah, sure. Why not? So it was quite interesting. We sort of kept bouncing back and forth, and I kept inspiring him to make new textures, and he kept inspiring me to try like different parts of themes in an episode. And we got quite far in and then realized, oh, hold on a minute. Maybe it is a bit insane to try and make an entire Megawad in this time. So I brought on a few guest mappers. Mm. So we got the likes of Anmut, Jimmy, Akira himself, Antares, so on and so forth, to like join the project one by one and told them, you got to keep this on a download sort of thing. We want to do a big release. And yeah, from there, we got a few people helping out, developed the entire project, got a couple of people to help out with music, mainly Jimmy. He was a huge help. But we had Eris Falling, who did like the boss music at the end, and so many great contributors sort of just joining in and feeling as passionate as I was about the project. And we all just kept motivating each other to do things, and it made us do things quicker. And before you know it, there's a Megawad ready.
So I want to touch on that. You talked a little bit about how you just wanted to do an ice level. You'd had some previous experience doing that, right? Was there a winter weekend?
Oh yeah, Joy of Mapping. Yeah, that was great.
So was this like, did you just enjoy making snowy things? Was that something that you already had in mind, or it just happened to fall into your lap as you made Eviternity?
A bit of all three, to be honest. So okay. I've previously enjoyed doing ice and snow themed maps. They have a real sense of atmosphere to them,
right?
And playing other people's maps, like Winter's Fury by Pyroscourge, for example, that is a hugely inspirational set. And yeah, Akira had done a handful of icy and snowy textures. When I say a handful, I mean 5 or 6 total out of this thousands of textures in a pack. And I was like, I looked at them and was like, these are really good quality. They just don't have anything to go with them yet. So I sort of pressured him into finishing the set rather than deleting them. I was like, well, what if I start using them now? And he's like, I can't stop you, but then I couldn't delete them either. And I was like, good, I've started using them. And he's like, fuck, okay, right. Well, I guess I'll see what I can do. So the ice episode ended up being one of the last ones that we developed just because of the lack of textures to begin with, sort of thing. But yeah, it was a theme I definitely wanted to explore because we were doing all sorts of other sort of themes. Like we had the sort of cold-looking, like gothic-y episode at the start. We had the rather warm-looking tech bases. Then I wanted like another sort of cold-ish episode, so to speak. So that was the ice episode. Then we had the brutalism one, which I'd say is just sort of neutral. And then you've got the hell episode, which is very hot, and then the heaven episode, which is, I guess, another neutral. So it's like 2, 2, 2, like 2 of each sort of thing. And I wanted to also have like complete different color palettes to each episode. So the first episode is quite a lot about like blue and brown and green sort of tones. The second episode was very sort of like orange and brown, very typical Doom colors sort of thing.
Right.
And then the third episode, I wanted to go for like a sort of pale color set, which later became the ice episode, obviously. With the third episode, the ice episode, I wanted like a more pale texture set, so mostly blues and whites, things that felt cold, and generally just wanted to use the full extent of the like Doom palette in its entirety as effectively as I could. So that included the pink hues. Mm-hmm. So episode 4, I wanted to bring in like lots of greens, and we later, during the development of this episode, changed the green to a teal range, which I really love. Absolutely love that, and people have since been referring to it as Eviternity, which puts a bit of a smile on my face. And like with the Hell episode, we wanted to bring in all the like blacks and the reds, and then I thought this is where we can bring the pinks in, and made that sort of alien sub episode in the middle of the episode, so to speak, with the two maps back to back that use all the blacks and pinks. And then with the final episode, it was all about the whites and the golds, get all heavenly. So we really stretched that palette to like its logical extents without having to like change the sprites in the way like Ancient Aliens did, for example, or make other adjustments. And I feel like we got a good job done out of that one.
So it's actually very interesting to me, the color palette thing, because I'm colorblind, so actually I don't see as many shades of like green and red and everything, or mixtures of them, purples, blues, get all mixed up for me. And I feel like there's probably something there that I don't get to appreciate that other people do. That
sounds very possible and honestly quite unfortunate. I'm sorry you have colorblindness.
Yeah. It's whatever. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying it fascinates me because of this.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually like complete tangent-ish, but Bridge Burner, I don't know if you've come across his maps before. They are very like color coordinated, and yet he's also got color blindness, which I find very fascinating. I know it's not like a full I'm not the most lectured on color blindness, so I don't know what different severities there are of it, so to speak, but I know that his wouldn't be like the most extreme where everything's sort of blurred into one, but I imagine he combines some colors that are close to each other and stuff. But yeah, his maps have a very strong color bound aesthetic despite his color blindness, which I find really fascinating.
It's not monochrome or anything like that. It's just so I've heard like different movie directors, like say do you know Eli Roth, who made Cabin Fever and movies like that, or Green Inferno, Hostel?
I actually don't know.
Okay, well, just as an example, in one of his films, Hostel, it's like a horror movie, and he kind of kills off characters. And each character in the movie, apparently, from what I've heard, I can't really tell, has like an article of clothing that's a certain color, and as they're killed off in the movie, that color drops from the palette of the film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like a subtle kind of, as the character dies, their color like just is no longer there. And apparently that's a really big part of the movie that someone like me completely misses. So it actually, I don't know, it doesn't break my heart. I accept where I'm at, but to hear that Eviternity has like this amazing, I can tell that the themes are different. I didn't really realize, what you're saying about how like each thing has its own color palette. That's really cool and really interesting and thoughtful that you would put that into it.
I mean, it's not that the colors didn't cross over from episode to episode. Like there were reuses of the colors, but each episode tends to have its like dominant color or two colors.
Right.
So that was definitely a focus while making it. I think that kind of comes naturally in some senses, though. I mean, I do like web design for a main job during the day.
Okay.
So I'm constantly working with different brand guidelines and things, and everything has to be like a specific shade of a specific color and that sort of thing. So it kind of just naturally became part of my working process when working in Dune, that I think about the colors and the way they complement each other and stuff.
Yeah.
Or if I'm going for something wild, the way they don't complement each other.
It happens a lot when we're doing the album artwork for the podcast, right? Because every episode of our artwork thus far, at least, has been unique. Like it's themed towards the person being interviewed or the game that they worked on or something along those lines. And the two guys that do it, Spaced and Haducant, are both incredible graphic designers, and I feel like they're always disappointed by my feedback because they're like, "What do you think about like this color?" Or like, "What do you think about the way this is laid out?" I'm like, "Looks great, dude. Like, it looks cool to me," because I'm not helpful in any way.
Ouch.
In
I
regards to that,
I understand that though. I mean, it makes sense. You can see, okay, yeah, this does look good. Can't really comment on the colors though. It seems fine to you. So
no, it's cool though. Like, I was actually going to ask if you had schooling about art and color balance and everything that led you to that, but you say graphic design is kind of your website design.
Yep, and graphic design on the side as well. So yeah, I mean, I was never really schooled about it at any point. But from as young as I can remember, I've always been interested in different aspects of computing and found that the creative side of things always just interests me and keeps me interested. So for as young, must have been about 10 years old when I tried making my first website. This would have been back in the 90s with a really old copy of Internet Explorer and Notepad. I was trying to do this in.
Right.
I just got a book from the library and things sort of progressed from there. As my Doom skills got better, so did my web design skills essentially throughout my upbringing. And must have been about when I was 16, I'd already taken the plunge and gone ahead and got a part-time design job while I was finishing up school. And then once I was finished with the college years, I made that full-time, and it's been a natural progression from there, really.
Right. Where did you grow up?
I live in Surrey in the UK.
No shit. But yeah.
Still in actually my hometown as it goes. I've just moved about a 10-minute drive from where I grew up.
Okay. I guess I'm asking like big community, small community, like early to adopt technology, rural, like this kind of aspect.
Okay. So in terms of like my upbringing, my father's always been quite a techie and gadget kind of guy. Right. So he's always been like the influence there from like a technological perspective. Mm-hmm. And both my mother and grandfather very artistic people. Like my grandfather always used to love doing sketches and different paintings, and my mum, being brought up by my grandfather, also like inherited all that sort of interest in painting and producing different formats of art. And I feel like my outcome is sort of like a slap bang in the middle, like combination of the two. I've taken my dad's techie aspects, I've taken my mum's sort of like artistic aspects, and basically become a technological artist somewhere in the middle.
I would agree to that, man. You're definitely an artist.
Thank you. I mean, sometimes it feels a bit, I don't want to say narcissistic, but pretty self-promoting to call yourself an artist without other people referring to you as that. But
well, I'll do it for you.
Thank you very much.
Don't worry about it.
But yeah, that's pretty much everything that sort of brought me into this area of the internet, this tiny little niche, the Doom community. So
sweet, that's amazing, man. Like it's like I didn't expect to actually get that kind of an answer out of you.
No,
a lot of people are kind of difficult about like where they come from or what influence their. I didn't want to get too Freudian, but like so your parents kind of like created a. I'm not going to call you a genius and blow your ego, but they created an excellent, highly influential Doom mapper. That's awesome.
Well, thank you very much.
Really cool.
Yeah, I feel like that does overplay my position in the community. I don't necessarily feel like I'm as like high up or influential per se. I'm no skill saw, but I don't know. I have had a couple of people reach out and say like, "Hey, I've started mapping because I've played such and such," and like I'm really thankful for that. Or, "Hey, I've been on your website. I now have learned how to do portals in my Doom map, and I'm really appreciative for that." So there's definitely some element of it influence, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I think it's fun. I've mentioned this a few times before, but I'll repeat it. I don't care. I like I said earlier, I'm a complete noob to this. Like I love the retro and classic FPS stuff. I love Doom. Like Doom is probably my favorite game, right up there with Quake and this type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of friends like Human Bones, right? I produce Doom is Dead podcast for him because I love him and everything he does. And he would probably be like, Nate, oh my God, Motherload, what the fuck is your problem? Why would you say that? There's a million other people that should be named before Dragonfly or something like that. But I don't have any, preconceived notions of who is and isn't important. So for me, it's like you made something that I really enjoy. So to me, you're the man, that kind of thing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Maybe that isn't true, but you are a large influence on my interest in Doom custom maps. That's just part of it.
I'm really not sure how to respond to that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's fine. You did mention your website, which I'm currently staring at. It is important to note that you do have tutorials available to people who are interested in getting into mapping and everything like that. That's really neat.
Yeah, I looked online. I was looking for how to do it was portals specifically, actually, funnily enough, that I really wanted to learn how to do quickly and like have a quick reference point to go to whenever I'm a little bit stuck with it. And there wasn't really anything that was quite ticking all the boxes. There's things that were very informative, and then there was like other maps I could refer to, but then I'd have to find where it is and stuff. It was never just there in a quick and easy format for me. So I looked around and like was looking for a website that does like more advanced tutorials, not the like dead basic ones like how to make a door or how to make a switch, that sort of thing. And I realized there was a bit of a lack of it, so I really wanted to try and, I don't know, fill that void a little bit for the community. I had a bit more spare time when I started this website. And yeah, I definitely feel like there's been some success. I've had quite a number of people reach out saying like, hey, thank you for this, or people have joined my Discord because they've been on my website looking at a tutorial, that sort of stuff, which has been fantastic. But yeah, I've definitely fallen to the wayside in terms of writing tutorials, and it's something I'd like to get back to once I've got a bit more time on my hands.
Yeah, I think that stuff's really important. It's something, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like kind of the equivalent in the Quake community, but it's something I talked to a lot with Jeremiah Killpixel from Wrath of Aeon of Ruin, is that he wanted to make a game on the Quake engine, and there was no real like, this is how you map in the Quake engine, or this is how you do things, this is what you should do with the code, this is how, that kind of thing, except for like one or two people, or like little messages here and there on different message boards that have been lost to time.
Yeah.
And people like you and people like Dump Truck, who would probably be the equivalent in the Quake community.
Yeah, Dump Truck's fantastic.
Or leaving that, creating something that people can just easily like go, hey, I need to know how to do something, learn it, take it, and then hopefully they create something amazing that they wouldn't have been able to or didn't have the time to do without having someone like you to kind of give them that guide. That's awesome.
Thank you. I mean, that's exactly the intention of the website.
Yeah.
Obviously, being my website, I had to put my own projects on there, but I still haven't bothered to go through it all and put every single one on there because, again, time ultimately. It just takes time to write the articles, to get all the screenshots, that sort of thing. And half the time, I'd like to put that time into making more maps. So
it's an ongoing thing, yeah. And I'm sure if you really wanted to, like, I'm assuming you designed your own website, but I'm sure people would love to help you, like contribute to the project if other mappers are.
Yeah. In fact, we very recently published the first guest article on that website, which is all about multiplayer mapping, which is written by Decay, who helped out on. He was a very important figure in the progressive mumbling my words here. Progressive Duel 2. So he basically gone like, well, there's no full-on guide to making like a modern multiplayer map. You've got a lot of basic tips out there, but there's no proper guide out there. And why don't we put it on your website? And that was that.
Yeah.
Thousands of words later, but there's this comprehensive guide on what makes a good multiplayer map, what different ports there are to play on, that sort of stuff. So it's a very good starting point for anyone interested in making maps for Deathmatch or Duel or Capture the Flag or anything like that.
And shout out to Decay. He was on Doom is Dead, I think 2 episodes ago, something like that. But he's, obviously, like it's just amazing.
I'm going to have to give that a listen now.
Yeah, that's where I heard of Progressive Duel in the first place. I think he was episode 2 or 3, if you need help finding it. Or I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
But yeah, that's where I first heard of Progressive Duel, was his episode on there. And that's why I was like, oh, I saw you did something cool.
Yeah. He's great to work with as well, Decay.
When you're making a map of any kind, Eviternity is a perfect example, or even the multiplayer like PvP maps. what do you have to take into consideration in regards to like the different source ports? Because I know it's a big thing. Sometimes, like the first time I played Eviternity, in fact, was we did a charity tournament. The Keep did. It was like a 3 event long, like it was all weekend. We did a Quake event with 2 pros playing against each other, and then we had a co-op event where we all played Eviternity together, but it was on Z-Daemon. And some of the maps that I later played in GZ Doom were completely different. They had to be changed or like left out or omitted in some way because they wouldn't function with their source.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Z-Daemon's kind of a relic of the past at this point. I don't think it's really updated its code base to a more modern copy of Z-Daemon in probably something close to a decade.
Oh, no, not at all. They're very, old school with that.
So some of the maps, I believe the ones that would probably have caused issues would have been maps 19 and 32. Are probably just a bit too big for Z-Daemon to handle. It just needs what they call extended nodes, I believe. I could be wrong in saying this. I might be getting my information muddled up here. But so in Z-Daemon, some maps just straight up wouldn't be playable unless we culled them and did some changes and stuff, maybe cut out areas from it entirely. Whereas in GZ-Doom, not only does it run the way it was intended to run, we've actually put in a few like cosmetic upgrades that only work in GZ-Doom.
Right.
Such as like the rainfall and the snow in episodes 1 and 3 respectively, or particles coming out of the portals and from teleporters. Stuff like that. And I mean the port consideration is definitely a big one, and for Eviternity specifically, I picked Boom format because it's the format I map quickest in. And if I had this big deadline to reach, obviously I wanted to make it in an achievable amount of time. And also I feel it's the ports with the biggest audience because most Boom maps are playable in almost every source port unless they're targeting a more vanilla sort of structure like Chocolate Dome, for example.
Right. So
Boom seemed like the obvious choice for that. Whereas, say, Skulldash, that originally targeted Sandrinum, or way back when I was first making it, targeted Skull Tag. Sorry, mixing things up a little bit. And the reason for that is I wanted it originally to be like more co-op oriented. And because it was pushing the engine and what it can do, like I was using advanced features like ACS and Decorate, I needed a Z-Doom based port that had a lot of the more modern features. So I couldn't use, say, Z-Daemon as my port for Skulldash simply because it doesn't have the feature set I need. But I did want online multiplayer, so Skulltag was the only option left. So yeah, it sort of depends on what my end goal is with the project as to what map format I pick. But I've done a map in just about every format at this point, except maybe Eternity. I don't know if they have their own format for that or not. I'd have to check.
You talk about Skulltag, working with that. Did you interact with Brad at any point during that time frame?
Not directly during the Skulltag time, but I have spoken to Brad or Carnival, for those not sure.
He was like when working really recently on the show.
Yeah, I listened to that. I did listen to that one. I've spoken to him while Rack Exaverse was in development. Even though Rack itself wasn't the most popular game, I really enjoyed it myself. And when I heard he was doing a sequel, I hopped on the Discord very briefly just to say hey, I appreciate your work. I'll get a copy of Exaverse when I've got the time and money to do so. And he was like, yeah, I really appreciate that. And that's pretty much it, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, for all the people who've talked down about Carnival and stuff, I think his contributions to the multiplayer scene have been immense, and without his work on Skulltag, I probably wouldn't be as invested in it as I am now. So
yeah, I think, I don't know, I've spoken about that enough that people know how I feel about it, but yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
So what kind of fucking name is Eviternity? How did you come up with that?
Okay, so back when we
some ridiculous names all the way through this.
Oh god, yeah. So Originally, the project was named Project Decadence. That was just a little code name I gave it. It was a name that I'd recently learned the meaning of and found it fancy and thought, oh yeah, that'll do. Slap that in. And as the project went on, I was thinking, well, we need a better name than this. This isn't that good. So amongst myself and the guest mappers that were present at the time, we were bouncing names back and forth, and I was just reading thesaurus pages and Googling random things and just trying to find various interesting names. And I don't know, I settled for a while on Novus, which means new in Latin. So it's almost called Novus and not Eviternity. And the reason I picked that was because, I don't know, Otex was new. I had the feeling it's going to be the next big texture pack for the community. And so far, that seems to be true. The amount of new Otex projects popping up is incredible. But I felt like that was leaning on the texture pack more than the map set. The map set wouldn't be new forever, so I was like, no, that's not the name for it. And while I was working on Eviternity, I was reached out to by the people who are working on Prodeus. And they'd taken me on board, but I said to them, I can't really do any work on this till I finish my own project first. I made that quite clear, and they were okay with that. But in my head, I was thinking, well, once I'm done with this map, maybe it's time I move on from Doom. Maybe I start trying to just become more into game dev as a whole. So kind of wanted it to be my last major release and everything. And I thought Eviternity was a good pick because it means eternal existence, or in this case, it'd be like my last mark on the community, for the better or worse. And yeah, I mean, since releasing it, I've been dabbling in Doom consistently since. I can't leave the game alone. I've learned. There's no escaping Doom. Once you're in, you're in.
At least you tried.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even give it an honest try, really, to be honest with you. But yeah, Prodeus has taken the forefront for me at the moment. I'm treating it somewhere between a hobby and a job. Like, it's a hobby I take seriously, much like Doom mapping. So, for the time being, it kind of is my last major release. But I do intend to come back in full force later on. But it's nice to experience something new in the meantime. But yeah, Eviternity, that's the name's origin. I can't remember how he came about that name in particular, but half the team didn't like it at first at all. And I was like, nope, I've decided this is the name. We're having this one. And they're like, yeah, but you said that about the last two. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. But it did stick in the end.
There's a map that's called Cryonology, or I could be mispronouncing it.
No, I think that's the correct pronunciation.
Okay. So that's like my favorite map that I've gotten to play, and it's freaking, it's so weird. It's an interesting map because it has these areas where you kind of can loop back around. For instance, there's a sort of, I don't know if it's intended to be a secret, but an area where you're in a small courtyard, and there's a large wall here, and then there's a door that you couldn't open before leads up a staircase to a room with a bunch of items in it, and then you can kind of go a certain way, hop up on a small part of the wall, and then try to get into this area.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but for some reason that frustrated the shit out of me. And that caused me to spend a lot of time on that map, and then I got really familiar with it and fell in love with it. Maybe it's not something worth spending a whole lot of time on, but can you just, for my own entertainment, walk me through that map in particular?
Well, that map isn't actually one of mine, funnily enough. That was by a guest map called Atronox, or...
Damn, well, now I feel like an asshole.
No, that's absolutely fine. That is a very common, top-rated map out of the set. That is a lot of people's favorites, and it's one of my favorites too.
Cool.
I couldn't pick an actual favorite out of all of them, to be fair. But yeah, the idea behind that map was do you remember the large arena in the far north with the big sort of marble columns and the clock face on the bottom of the arena? So that was the first thing made for the level, that big centerpiece. So basically, I had told H-Knots, this is the music you're getting, and he was really happy about that because he's a huge fan of Stew Boy. This is the map slot you're getting, which was originally going to be map 13, but we shuffled it around because of difficulty reasons and wanting it to be sort of like a linear difficulty scaling throughout the episode. And he'd obviously, in its position, that meant this would have to be a snow map. So he had a few things sort of decided for him. So in his head, he had the number 13 because it's map 13. He had like the very different piece of music to what most sort of maps got, because that was one that Stewboy had offered to write, and we know what his style is like. And he got to work on like just making this wonderful looking like marble. I don't know how to word it other than like a big gazebo almost, but that doesn't do it justice by any means. And like embedding this 13-hour clock face in the center of it because it was map 13. He wanted to play on the whole unlucky 13 aspect of it. So that one point, that one moment of the map is basically what created the rest of it for him, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, I mean, I did help with that map, and so did Zacer. I'm sure you've heard that name before. Begins with an X. So Aatrox was having a bit of trouble finishing the map. He didn't know how he wanted to end the level. So he passed it back to me saying, like, could you give me a hand with this? And Zacer had reached out to me asking for help with his map as well. So we'd done a deal where Zacer helps with Atro's map, and I help with Zacer's map, and then we bounce them back to each other and sort of finish things up. And then that what came of that was the whole Stonehenge section at the end of the level.
Yes.
So that was like Zacer's contribution, which I assisted with, and in replacement for him helping me with that, I did the thing placement in map 26, the one which has the Hell Tower and the Heaven scene with BFG and rockets only. So yeah, it was a really interesting development cycle. It was constantly everyone sort of helping each other out here, there, and everywhere.
That's so cool. I like the idea that you said, he had some things decided for him to begin with, like, right, like, here's your map, here's your slot number and everything. So like, be creative within these confines. I always enjoy that. Like when you have limitations and you have to try to engineer your way into something and then create something out of limitation.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ways of working as well. Like the 1024 challenge, and in fact, there was one a new member to the community called Zizzy01 turned up, and the whole story behind that one was quite funny. So he turned up and said, "Hey, I'm making this mega wad where all the maps take place in the 256 by 256 square," which is crazy. Yeah. It's got the same concept as 1024, where the map can be bigger, but the player can't escape that tiny little square. And he was like showing screenshots and stuff, and then most people just looked at this and went, "Yeah, but I want to make one now." And suddenly people were like, "Yeah, I've made one," and then submitted it to the thread, even though it wasn't a community project. And it very quickly became a community project because of how many people were interested. And yeah, that's one of my favorite limitations that I've worked in. I made this ridiculously tall 3D tower that's only 256 by 256 square, like horizontally, and yeah. God, we're going all over the place here.
No, that's awesome. It's tangential, kind of go one way or the other. I know you have a limited amount of time though, so let's go ahead and put the kibosh on Doom for now. Maybe we'll revisit it in a future interview or something.
Sure.
But let's talk about Prodeus.
Prodeus. So where do we start with Prodeus? I've obviously already mentioned how Jason, also known as General VV, reached out to me while I was working on Eviternity, so don't need to worry about how I got the job so much. But yeah, obviously they reached out. They gave me a very early demo copy of the engine and left me with the editor and said, "Do what you want, learn as you go, see what happens." Gave me absolutely no limitations at all, and I had to ask for a couple of bits of advice, like what different hotkeys are there, what's the best way of doing this, just to make sure I wasn't doing it wrong, because the editor was in quite a like primitive format compared to what it's in now. So there's no like built-in tooltips. There was no hotkeys that were like viewable. You just had to know them. And yeah, I very quickly got to work and started making this sort of like acid-filled tech base type thing. Very Doom. Very, very Doom in its style. And sent it back to them. They're like, "Oh, yeah, this is cool. Carry on. If you need any advice from us, reach out. Don't be scared. they kind of put me to the test at first because they wanted to see how easy the editor is to use for someone without hand holding them, because that's one of the big parts of the game is the editor will be shipped with the game for the community to use as they will. So obviously they wanted to test the viability of that by giving it to me. And yeah, I got on with it pretty well very quickly and found myself starting to do all these different interesting like styles of architecture that I couldn't do in Doom without putting in hours and hours fiddling with like dummy sectors and awkward sloping and all this sort of stuff. And yeah, so they were happy with what I've done, and obviously like we've done rounds and rounds of feedback and evolved the map from the initial version that I'd made. And then from there, I guess it's just sort of like the rest is history in the sense that every time there's a new update, I download it. I'm looking for ways to use these new tools or the new enemies or whatever. And it's just a constant back and forth. And I'm now currently working on my, I guess you'd say 4th level, but 3rd level that's intended for the like early release. Almost finished that last weekend. So I've just received a round of feedback, which I'm going to work on. And yeah, it's just, in terms of the workflow, it's been fantastic.
As they release or like, you know, update things, do you find yourself going back and be like, oh shit, now I want to do this with a previous, you know, map that had already basically finished?
There's a little bit of that, a little bit.
Okay.
I know there's going to be a bit more once we get some new weapons built into the game. There's been some encounters I've designed where I'm thinking, yeah, in my head I want this kind of weapon, but we don't have that yet, but I know it's coming. So I'm building it with that in mind, but making sure it's possible without it, sort of thing for now. But I think the most notable example of like things I wished I had sooner was a cylinder tool. Mm-hmm. So the way Prodeus's engine works is every surface is a face. So in Quake, you've got brushes, which are typically a 6-sided cuboid. And obviously you can distort them and do what you need to do with them. But in Prodeus, it's just one side, one face per brush, if you will. Or it could be multiple. You can extrude and do all sorts of different distortions to them to make the shapes that you're looking for. But yeah, with this method, I created a fully like circular lift that's like a really tall vertical tunnel, and there's like combat on lift as it's rising and stuff. I did all that with some of the earliest versions of the tools. And then not too long later, Mike, the main programmer and like the original idea for Prodeus, he's where the idea came from. He'd programmed in a cylinder tool and a stair tool, which means that it's much quicker to make stairs, and it's really a lot quicker to make like cylindrical things because you can specify how many sides you want, how big you want it, and then distort it from there to the shape that you're looking for. So that was probably the most notable example of, I really wish I had that sooner.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of a workflow, it's very different from what I'm used to with Doom. So, and yet very familiar somehow. So in a Doom engine, unless you are like a full-blown artist, you usually work with what you've got. You can't, or most people can't just make all the textures that they want, or they can't make new music or what have you. They'd have to rely on other people to do that, or they just get on with what the community's already made. And that's one of my sort of methods of working originally, is like, okay, so I've only got this texture pack to work with, so I'm going to work within the limitations of the texture pack, or these are the enemies I've got, like the standard Doom bestiary, so I can't add anything more to that because I don't have the know-how or whatever the situation may be. Whereas in Prodeus, I'm being given, like, I'm sort of being drip-fed new bits of content, like new textures, new tools, new enemies, new weapons, just bit by bit. And it's quite a fun way to work, honestly, because you don't know what you're going to get next, and it is quite inspirational, each piece that comes forward. It's like, oh, wow, okay, so now that I've got these new textures, I can make this theme and do this, and oh, nice, this is exciting. So you're not stuck within a limitation for too long.
Jason was on QuakeCast, I think in like April last year, and he talked a little bit, into kind of the way that the storytelling would work in Prodeus. how much of that is being given to you in your mapping? Like, are they kind of dictating, like, we want sort of this to be found out at this point in the game, or?
So initially there was none of that. When I was first given the editor, they just said, like, you're a Doom mapper, you've done maps for other games, go have fun, see what happens.
Right.
And what I created was very much like within their aesthetic and what they're looking for, so that just worked out really nicely. But as time's gone on and as the ideas have developed more internally between like the main two developers, they're sort of like saying, okay, so that bit that you've made here fits into this part of the progression, so your map's going to be in this slot, so on and so forth. But they're not telling me everything. Like, I'm not fully clued up about the entire project at any given time. Right. Like, even I'm like being surprised the same way the public are sometimes, which is very fun. And it's done in such a way that isn't like impacting my ability to work. Like, there's clear communication from them and from myself between us to make sure that what I'm going to be working on or what I am working on does or can line up with their like overall vision. But I think they're trying to not sort of pigeonhole my experience into a slot and rather let my inspiration help the story develop and so on and so forth. So
really cool, man. Is anything else that you just kind of wanted to touch on?
Put on the spot like that, I'm not sure. I never did do an overview of what Prodeus itself was, so
if you'd like to, yeah, we'd love that. I don't know why I just assumed everybody tuning into this already knew what it is, but yeah, like there's actually not as much publicity as I think there should be, so go ahead.
Yes, it's a difficult thing to publicize and work on at the same time. It's almost like we need one marketer kind of guy.
Hey.
Well, I'm kidding. You never know. But yeah, so Prodeus is a retro-styled first-person shooter. It's built within the Unity engine, but doesn't use the Unity engine for like the level creation side of things. So it's kind of its own engine built inside of Unity. So for those who play games like Doom and Quake and similar like 90s to early 2000s first-person shooters will probably love this. It's very fast-paced. It's got like a great monster variety. It's got very interesting locations and all that sort of stuff. And speedrunners and normal like casual players alike will definitely be able to have the time of their life in this game, in my opinion. So overall, Prodeus is sort of like the dream FPS to the 90s FPS guy, in my opinion anyway. I'm not trying to downplay the value of Dusk and Wrath and similar games. They definitely hold a candle in their own right. And I feel like Prodeus is like a good accompaniment to the recent renaissance with 90s FPS games, and it's probably the most doomiest of them. So we've had a few that are very Quake-ish, a bit Heretic and Hexen-y, but this is the big Doom one, I think. And honestly, it's a complete honor to be picked to work on it.
It's really fun to, like, when I show people the trailer, because I do this a lot, is just kind of like, hey, this is the stuff that I've been looking into. Like, I showed a friend at his house, I'm like, hey, check this trailer out, and the Kickstarter trailer for Prodeus, and everybody's like, oh, is this Doom? Like, they just think it's Doom.
That's what we want to hear, ultimately, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like in my opinion, I like the art style better than like photorealistic stuff. That's just kind of my personal preference.
Yeah.
But the way that Prodeus, at least the most recent footage that I have seen, it's still a bit on the pixelated kind of old school vibe side. And I understand that it's going to be highly customizable in that regard. Or at least that's what's been sold to me.
No, that is true. So currently in the engine, the ability to toggle resolution is there on just a simple hotkey, and you can do that in the editor. You can do that in the game, and it changes in real time. So it goes from like I think it's 240p, so 320 by 240, or might be 360 by 240 for widescreen. Then you've got 360p. You've got, I think it goes up to 480p, then it jumps up to your native resolution. So for most people, that'd be 1080p. And there's also like the ability to toggle from models to sprites and vice versa, various other options like that. So like all these sprites in the game are actually dynamically generated on the fly at any given time from models. So if your art style is Doom and you want it as chunky and pixely as it goes with sprites, then you're completely covered and you can have that aesthetic. But if you're more late 90s and you prefer your Quake sort of visuals and you want like the sort of lower poly models and like a higher resolution, all that sort of stuff, that's also your thing. Or if you want a mix between two, say you want it in a higher resolution but you want sprites because you like the sort of GZ Doom aesthetic, that's there as well.
My way of thinking like about Prodeus, at least what I kind of hope to get out of it, is it seems like it's the Doom with no corporate shit, impacting it that I wanted.
Yeah, that's
to come out. Yeah,
that's definitely the sort of way of looking at it. I mean, ultimately, everyone invested and everyone in the team is passionate about the project. They're not doing it for the bottom line. They're doing it because it's the project they've always wanted to work on.
Right.
So, like for Jason and Mike, they've known each other for years. I think they've both worked at Raven Software at one point, and I know Mike himself worked at id Software for a bit, and various other like game studios. And they finally like bitten the bullet and said, "Look, we're going solo. Let's do it. Let's do the game we want to do. Let's have fun." And if they make money in the process, they're happy about it. But ultimately, it's a passion project, and I think that's what's going to get the best results out of the team, is the fact that everyone is excited to make what they're making.
That's exactly what I want to hear.
I'm glad. Yeah, it's, from my perspective, it still feels like it's my hobby, much like Doom. I don't feel like it's a job. And I'm quite excited to sit in front of the computer and go, yeah, I've got 3 hours free. Let's do some Prodeus mapping. Like I have that same level of love and fun and joy from it that I get from cracking open Doom Builder.
All right, man. I don't have anything else for you. Do you have any social media, anything you want to plug, closing thoughts?
Well, since you're inviting me to plug, sure. I have my website, which is dfdoom.com. That's a good place to go if you want to catch up on any projects I'm working on, get blog posts on things like Prodeus and stuff, which I'm going to be starting to write more actively in the near future, or any tutorials, as we mentioned earlier. I've got Twitter, which is, I believe it's Dragonfly_Doom. And I'm on Discord as well with Dragonfly, #0001, I think. Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, if you ever want to get in touch, feel free to hop on my website, catch me on Discord. I'm very friendly and approachable most of the time, unless I've had a bad day. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be here in the Keep.
Well, thank you, man. Let's get out of here.
All right. Peace out.
Doomers, do not forget that the Multiplayer Doom Federation is putting on Kingdoms Take the Crown Doom 2 Duel Tournament. It kicks off Saturday, February the 15th with qualifiers and will go on every Saturday until Saturday, March 14th, when we will have the final bracket. For more information on this event, make sure that you go visit doomfederation.com. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to hear more like it, first of all, you can go to inthekeep.com and check out our full catalog. There's plenty of Doom content in there, including interviews with people like Brad Carnival Carney, Devastation, DB Thanatos and Michaelis, AF Domains, Mifu, and Wadaholic. Once again, thank you to Dragonfly, thank you to Eris Falling for the intro music, and thank you also to James Paddock for the music that you're hearing right now from the original soundtrack to Eviternity. Until next time, stay in the Keep.